Are you there?
Yeah, here.
All right, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Oh, that's good. All right, so, um, is there any particular direction you want to take this? I was going to read maybe, or, just say that you were involved in Project Mannequin, right?
Yeah, I don't like saying too much about myself. I don't like speaking about the past too much. Let's just say that I was involved with a security team at an underground facility in the UK, and people might be able to check any details and find out what they need to know from there.
Right, because you've done interviews with, Miles Davis and Kerry Cassidy, and a lot of that stuff's already out there.
Oh yeah, most of the stuff's already out there. That's what I mean. Going over old ground
Right,
again.
right. So yeah, but just as a background to people who, if they just tune in this interview for the first time, so they can find all that from the basis interviews or from Kerry Cassidy. But just as an idea, so in the late '70s, you were working security at a base near Peasmore in Berkshire,
In
right?
Berkshire, yeah.
And all right, and that was Project Mannequin, and the main thing going on there that you talk about is that they were creating kind of hybrids or using extraterrestrial technology to make kind of genetic, or I don't know whether you call them robots or what, but
Just call them drones. That seems to be the buzzword today. That they're biological creatures with limited intelligence, but are totally programmed. And the two main features at that particular facility was the creation of these drones, but also they were heavily into mind control technologies and genetics.
right. So since a lot of that's already covered in the old interviews, is there anything
Yeah.
new in particular, any new direction you want to take this in?
Well, I'm not too sure because, as I say, there's a number of people over the years have come onto the scene, and they've mentioned a few things that seem to verify my original claims.
Right.
But I've got to tell you now, I'm very dubious of a lot of these newcomers to the scene,
Right.
simply because they've had access to the internet and YouTube and God knows what else. So it's far too easy these days for someone to just data mine the internet. They can concoct their own stories, weave details from other people into their own stories. So I'm not saying that there's no genuine people out there, but we just have to be very, very careful.
Right. And you released these voice documents, right? I think it's
That's right, yeah,
and
between 1994 and 2000.
right. And I was looking through some of those. I didn't have enough time to look through all of them, but I read through over.
There's over 40 in all spread over those years. It had to be done in that certain way, filtered out over a long period of time, very slowly, mixed in with a load of other material. That was the way I was advised to get those documents released.
All right.
They didn't want it all in one go, because that would have been just too easy to get taken down.
Right. So I was looking through that, and one of the things I noticed that corresponds to what you just said, you said in there that about half of the project of Mannequin is devoted to UFO research, and you put research in kind of quotes.
Mm-hmm.
And it says in the U.S. alone, 490 civilian researchers are said to have been used by Mannequin. As of 1980, 78% of them had surgical implants, but I guess the idea is there was kind of like an MK Ultra type program that they went through before they became public researcher types, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of these people will run through these programs before they even come out with these stories, right? Or doing investigations.
Well, I mean, you can vastly increase that percentage these days. We're talking 30 odd years ago now, so the numbers must be quite considerably more.
Right, and I think you had numbers on there too, to where and these are papers that were given to you, right, to publish.
Yeah.
And the numbers on there were saying that they calculated like a risk ratio or something like that. I guess that has something to do with how much they're able to dilute information that's public. Is that what that's about?
Yeah, well, there's a combined threat level where a certain amount of information has to be watered down to keep the threat level itself lowered.
Right.
Individual. I mean, when you get the backing of, now you probably know this yourself, probably many of the members already have an idea that within the military and within the intelligence services, there are factions of individuals who are not liking this level of secrecy.
Right.
So they're working behind the scenes to get all this out in one way or another. And they will use researchers, they will use whistleblowers if they can. They daren't come out, obviously, themselves, because that will compromise who they are. But we call them the grey hats. They're working with both the black and the white hats. They want to get this information out one way or another, but it's taking a heck of a long time.
But just from the figures in that paper, it would suggest that upwards of 80%, maybe even more than 90% of people out there as investigators are part of the disinformation campaign?
Well, yeah, again, we've got to be very careful there, because a lot of the individuals are going to be unknowingly spreading disinformation. If they're given information to pass out in one form or another, they've got to take it on trust that the information is correct. They're not going to know themselves whether it's true or not.
Right, it makes sense. All right.
I mean, they've used a couple of very high-profile researchers over here in the UK. I didn't really use their names, but I think people would have a damn good idea who these two main researchers are.
So you're still kind of in a position where you still can't say too much?
It literally does depend on certain things. I obviously cannot compromise myself or my associates by saying certain things. I will hint and give clues, but there's certain things I just, obviously cannot say out straight.
All right. So maybe one of these questions is too sensitive. I saw a part in one of your newsletters that says that the security intelligence services are working directly for the Crown. Is that one of those areas where I shouldn't ask about?
Well, again, I got into a bit of hot water 2-3 years ago. I was with the Mel Fabregas, you know him?
No.
Veritas. He does a radio and a TV show. He's a damn good researcher. He has a lot of guests on his shows. I was on his forum a few years back, and on that particular forum, before I left, I left a cryptic message somewhere in the meaning of, I owe my allegiance only to the Crown and to the realm. And obviously he took that to mean that everything I'd said up until that time, including all that I'd spoken to him over a 4-hour interview in 2010, was false. I said, no, you're getting it all wrong. When I say I owe my allegiance to the Crown, that's the country, not actually the monarch that's in charge at the moment. So there's two different things there. It's the same with certain members of the intelligence community. Yes, they owe their allegiance to the Crown or the realm, but not necessarily to the Queen. It's the country, England. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but that's where our allegiances lie, with this country.
So it doesn't necessarily have to do with the Queen. Like, she doesn't necessarily have to be involved or know anything about these projects.
No, not at all.
All right. And related to what you just said about somebody thought, maybe you're spreading this info then. I noticed on another one of the pages of The Voice, you had a list there. It was titled "Individuals Directly Involved in Public Education and Social Indoctrination Program," and you had there was a whole list of researchers in there. Like I remember there was Nick Redfern, Linda Moulton Howe, a lot of people listed, and you said some of these people might be indirectly. They don't know that they're spreading disinfo. It's just what they get and they pass it on. But what I thought was interesting was your own name was on there. And I thought that was interesting. You'd post your own name on there in these documents. I'm sure you got a meaning for that, right, or something?
Yeah. Well, mainly it was to say we're in a program where we're trying to educate the public, indoctrinate the public into what these things are. They're here, they're doing this, they're doing that. So that was I put my own name down. Obviously, if people think I'm spreading disinfo, but then there's very little I can do about that. All I can say is, no, I'm not. I've stuck my neck out for 22 years.
Right.
And I'll keep doing so.
All right. And there's a lot of member questions, too, but you answered most of them on the forum itself already, so I don't know.
But if you wanted to go over any of those, it's not a problem. I mean, you mentioned, I know a lot of people are going to be interested in the Dr. Stephen Greer business.
Right, yeah.
That's an area all on its own.
And also the basis stuff, you said you had some concerns about what happened there.
Yeah. Well, what I'm very concerned with now at this point in time is Miles Johnston is interviewing so many people have come forward, or he's sought them out. And I'm very, very dubious on the credibility of a number of his interviewees, and I'm pretty worried that I really don't want to be associated with most of those people. So by coming forward, it means Miles keeps asking me to do a Bases 1 update. After it's been here 20 odd years. But as I've told him, I'm still dubious of coming forward because I do not want to be associated with a lot of those people. A lot of them, I'd say, are just out and out attention seekers, and they're fantasy prone individuals, and I obviously don't want to get mixed in with that crowd. So I've got to be very, very careful. That's why I don't usually do interviews, because I've done my bit, I've put my information out there, and I'm now just sitting back looking at who else is coming forward, but the state of the alternative community leaves a lot to be desired.
All right. And with Stephen Greer, is that kind of a similar thing? Because I know his information kind of took a turn. A lot of people.
Yeah, well, that's the awkward thing with Stephen Greer. Now, I respect him. He's a great researcher. He's a great individual. He's a very big name. People look up to him. People respect him. I stood up for him a few times on forums when people were slagging him off, and I said, well, come on, let's give the guy a chance. There's two things I'm against Dr. Greer with. Firstly, when he says there are no bad ETs out there. Well, that's obviously a complete crock of you-know-what. But also, I've got my own private beef with him regarding the information I supplied him in 2000. And 2 years after that, he started using in his interviews and his talks. Now he's taken it over and thrown me under the bus regarding my original documents. So, yeah, I'm still trying to get recognition from him and his team that I was the original source of that material.
Well, I don't want to get into that area, but, there's a lot of rumors, too, that he was compromised in a very specific way. I'm sure you heard about all that.
Yeah, quite possibly, but it doesn't negate the fact that he's coming out publicly and saying he's got a dozen or so members, witnesses to these things. He can tell you where these things are made. He's stood there and watched them come off the production line, as he calls it. And that's me saying, well, I'm sorry, old son, but I came out publicly in '94 with this material, everyone really thought I was, off my rocker. And then years later, Dr. Weir comes out with the same sort of thing, and it's emphasised he did this, he did that, and it's got so many other people involved. But every time I go to say, well, okay, but a little bit of recognition would go a long way. I supplied you with this stuff, but I'm just thrown under the bus. And yeah, he's probably been compromised in certain ways, but it still doesn't change the fact that he's been using people's data for his own ends.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm looking through the forum questions here, seeing what was going on. Aragorn wants to know a few questions. He wants to know the difference first between a PLF and a PGLF, which I guess a PLF is...
It's the same thing.
Yeah, same
it's just
thing.
Greer's just shortened it to PLF rather than PGLF. It's exactly the same thing.
And you said...
Right.
I think I heard in one of your previous interviews you said these things have, or originally had, some kind of hive consciousness, and they have to be individuated artificially, or otherwise they just think as a group. Like if you give one a command, all of them will do it type thing?
Yeah, well, that will come under the programming. Now, obviously, I'm no techie, so I don't know the ins and outs of how they actually do the programming, but yeah, it works that way. They can program an individual or a block. It literally would depend on the job there to do at that time. These are limited thinking beings. They do have as far as I'm aware, they do have some sort of consciousness, but I wouldn't like to say at what level. It's like when people have said to me, well, have the things got a soul? And I thought, well, every living creature has a soul as such. We don't, how do we define a soul? But I suppose these things also have a soul, but I can't explain what it would be like.
Right. Outside of like my lab type experiences, have you ever like run into them and had any kind of exchange beyond just like seeing one pop up in a base?
Let me see how I can word this. There was an occasion, an experience I had that later on I could look back and say, well, I think that actually was a drone rather than an ET Grey. So that was an experience I had in, 1974.
So they can be hard to tell apart then.
Well, as I said, from later years, looking back, I thought, well, it is possible. Obviously, at the time, I thought it was something entirely different than ET, but looking back now, it could well have been a programmed drone. A lot of these my labs are.
And I guess you never heard anything too much about their biology, did you? Whether how related they are to mankind, if they could be considered like a mammal, or if...
Well, as I said, I'm not into that side of things.
Right.
What information is beyond me, I literally can't answer. No, I wouldn't know.
And I think, I'm not sure if it was you or not, somebody was talking about this whole Project Bluebeam type thing where they're, they were thinking at some point about introducing an extraterrestrial threat as a way of bringing humanity together, create a type of like world organization or something like that. Was that you that was saying that you think that because that program has already been talked so much about in public and that idea has been batted around, that it's kind of off the table now, that it's been kind of compromised?
Yeah, well, this is it. A lot of people have been saying, well, because everyone seems to know so much about Project Bluebeam and what can and what cannot be done, it would seem a bit futile now to have a fake invasion, a fake scenario. Everyone's awake. Yeah, we'd immediately suspect it's the government, it's the military. Maybe that could be our own undoing, but most of us would immediately think, oh, I know, yeah, that's the military, that's the government, and yeah, I think that's put on hold for a while. I can't actually see that working anymore.
Right.
There's too many awake people.
Right. Do you think there actually is some kind of struggle going on in space outside of them just trying to fake it? Do you think there really is some kind of conflict either between what we might call good and bad ETs or the government and different kinds of ETs?
Well, that's an area I've decided to keep clear of, to be honest. A lot of material, as you know, has been floating around of late.
Right.
And I've deliberately kept myself at a distance from that material.
That's because you don't want to be associated with it, right?
Well, this is it. I can't say that the individuals concerned are truthful or not, because it's not up for me to say, is it? It'd be unethical for me to name names and such, but it's material I'm not happy with, and as the claims get more and more fantastic, the more I want to withdraw from that. It just seems just too fantastic, to be honest. And I've seen some really fantastic, strange things in my time, but I think what's happening over the last couple of years with people coming forward with certain data, well, it's just too much. Obviously, people can accept or deny what they've been shown, but personally, I'm taking it all with a very big pinch of salt and keeping it well away from it.
Well, let me ask it in this way then. So you say there's gray hats and there's black hats in the military, and I guess there's somewhere in there's also the white hats.
Oh yeah, the white hats, yeah.
Right. So that's just on a human level. Are there ETs taking sides in that human conflict there?
Well, let's say that an easier way to put this would be that assistance and information is funneled towards the grey hats, as well as the white hats. But that's a dilemma the grey hats face. They're given certain information to leak out, and they're wondering, on one hand, should we pass this out to the white hats, or should we just sit on it and pass it back to the black hats? It's such trying to describe it to people who are not actually know how the intelligence community works. It's very, very difficult. You've got people within the defence areas that are so itching to get stuff out to the public. Say, well, look, this is what we're really doing with all your dollar money, but they can't. They're stymied.
The grey hats almost have like a moral dilemma.
Yes, that's very true. So I've had the fortune or misfortune to actually sit with both types, simply because of my past. I've been allowed to sit in on meetings, and I can tell you, sitting on both sides, it really blows your mind, because you've got one half saying one thing, and they want to get that information out, and then you've got the other side saying, phew, that will never be told.
So some of these people have no intention of ever letting this stuff out.
Exactly. I mean, everyone's clamoring over, disclosure's coming, this is going to happen, it's not. Disclosure cannot take place in the way people want. It's impossible. It's no good thinking that, disclosure just means the government saying, yes, there are strange craft in our atmosphere. Sometimes there are strange creatures associated with them. It doesn't end there, because people are going to start digging. What about abductions? What about cattle mutilations? What about this? What about that? So we start to unravel the onion. And the more layers that come off that onion, the more real deep trouble the government's going to be in, and they daren't allow that.
Right. So it's going to have to be something outside of the government, or some kind of new group or something that pressures them.
Yeah, quite possibly, because, literally heads are going to roll, and they can't afford to do that.
All right, let me see. I'm scrolling down through some more questions here. And I had some more I wrote down, too, from these documents that I was reading. You mentioned briefly in one of these documents, and I don't know if this is something you want to get into either, but you said that, so Whack and Hunt is a security company, or they provided security, supposedly even at Area 51. Did you say in your documents that you had some slight involvement over there for a period of time?
Not an actual involvement. I was actually escorted away from the area.
Oh, all right, I got you. So you just had an encounter with them over there?
Yeah. I perhaps got too close to certain parts and was escorted away by the security there.
All right. And another thing is your childhood experiences. This is a pretty interesting area because you had a near-death experience when you were two. And you have the impression that at that time another soul, that your previous, or the being that you were or that was before you had this near-death experience at two, might have been a different spirit or soul than what came in after the near-death experience. Is that the general idea?
Yeah. I know that sounds so ridiculous. But
Well, I mean, not to me, because I've heard a lot of near-death experiences, and I mean, there's some wild stuff out there. Really, it's probably one of the best proofs there are that consciousness survives death.
Well, I detailed all this over time on a couple of forums or so. That, yeah, the changes really started at the age of 2. I think I went into great detail again with this Mel Fabregas. I said this 4-hour interview we had in 2010. I'm pretty sure I really went into great detail regarding the program I was involved in as a child.
What interview was that?
Yeah, it was. Let me see. It was Veritas.
Okay.
I haven't got any links available at the moment, but I'm pretty sure people can dig out. It was in March 2010. An interview done in 2 parts of 4 hours altogether. So obviously we had a good long chat and we went through so many details.
Right, so we can just refer to that then.
I really opened up on that. Now I do know for a fact that the first 2 hours, because he's very clever, is Mel. What he does, he gives you an hour free of an interview, but then you've got to join.
All right, yeah.
To get the second half, but I do have recordings of the whole 4 hours, and I can try some way or another to get copies available if people are at all interested. But it does save a lot of time going through all that again. That what I was involved in, what happened,
right,
all the details. But certainly, yeah, I was in a program, and that lasted up until my early teens, and that really stemmed from this. Age 2, when, I mean, some people call it a walk-in. I mean, we must label things. We must call certain things certain names. I mean, a walk-in, I suppose, would be appropriate in one way, but it does sound a bit silly in another. It's just a total soul change. So the original Barry King, who died at 2, was taken over by another Barry King and carried on through all this.
And I've heard of this before. I've heard of other people talking about it, that this happens a lot when there's a situation where somebody should die or be dead and then they'll come back, but now they're different. But what's interesting is you say, well, yeah, I had that experience myself from a young age. So that's interesting. Do you think that this is a type of, this is a common occurrence as far as maybe even almost like a predestination or a before you incarnate, this is kind of my goal type thing, like it was planned from the start as far as you getting into all these programs later in life?
Well, it's either that or it's manipulated at that point of change or near death or whatever, so you actually go through life along a certain predetermined path that they, whoever they are, have set out for you. That would seem to be, when I look back at all this, age of 2, died, came back, and then from the age of about 4 or so into this program, and then all these other things have happened to me. And I've asked people time and time again, please start at the beginning, have patience, but you'll see that the dots do get connected all the way through. Why I got invited, let's put that in brackets, to actually work at Peasmore. It all comes down to the previous dots. So you've got to join all the dots together. Then it makes sense of why I was picked, why I had to do certain things. It's because I was already known, I was already in the program. A lot of people think, well, I can't make sense of this. You were here, then you were there. And I said, well, no, look from the very beginning, go through my childhood, go through my teens and my 20s, then you'll get to Peasmore, then you'll see the whole picture.
And it isn't just because you're a researcher in the 70s. It probably has more to do with...
It's a pretty good cover, in a way.
Right. But then even before you were introduced into these government programs at a young age in your teens and stuff, even before that, just this walk-in type experience. And then you said also in 1962 when you were a child you had an experience in a park where you said you saw a black dish-shaped object in the sky.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, that was very weird. And we've tried regression to try and get a few more details, but it always ends in a panic once that black disc literally covers the sky, above me. Once that comes down, that's it. And then the next thing is I'm slowly walking home. So yes, something happened.
Were you playing by yourself that day in the park?
No, I had my brothers and the sister there. We were all playing in the park along with a lot of the other kids, but the sister fell off this like a roundabout device. I was pushing it far too fast, and she fell off and hurt a knee. So my brothers took her home, and of course I thought, well, I'm not going to go home just yet. I'm going to get into serious trouble, so I'll stay just where I am. And it just seemed to happen after that. First it was just a black dot in the sky. I thought, no, that's interesting, yeah, great. But as it got bigger, I just thought, wow, what is that? And of course, as a kid, you've got no idea.
Right.
And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger until that was it. And then I remember hands in pockets, head down, walking home, and I know I'm going to get into a heap of trouble with my parents. And it was just gone.
Do you know how much time elapsed between when you blacked out and when you came to? I mean, was it now dark all of a sudden or something like that?
No idea. It couldn't have been that long because it was still light. But then again, I can't remember what time of year it was.
Right. Do you think that these early experiences you had, I mean, do you feel like you have some kind of connection to extraterrestrials greater, than... I don't want to say like, maybe, some people say, well, I was a Pleiadian or I was a whatever before I was born. You don't feel like anything like that, right?
No. I'm dubious of other people's claims when they say that. I mean,
right. Like, how could they know, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just something you would know.
Right. So it's possible it's just that we'd be totally blanked for it. I mean, if we knew it, the government would probably be able to figure it out, And then I guess that would compromise.
Yeah, a lot of people know a lot of things, but not everyone knows everything. I certainly don't.
Right. And I noticed something else. You had a list of countries involved in Mannequin, and some of these are interesting. Of course, you've got the U.S., U.K., Canada. But then also Brazil was listed, France, Germany, Mexico, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Holland.
As the years progressed and as the program became more intricate, and they wanted more and more people because they knew certain types of people were situated all around the globe. So it was spread out. And in Australia, it's pretty big over there too.
Do you think this has penetrated into countries that are, conventionally seen as enemies or, distrusted, like China or Russia? You think, have these kind of underground programs penetrated over there, or do they just have their own programs?
There's a possibility I'm pretty sure, Russia do have a very similar setup. China wouldn't surprise me at all. They're very sneaky, the Chinese, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. The amount of money they could put into such a program, surprised me.
All right, I'm just looking back through my notes. One thing I thought was interesting was you said that these grays I don't know whether these are the drones or the real ones. I guess these are the drones. You can even screw, almost pop off something that's over their eye because they were designed to be pilots, so they would have to have an eye protection.
No, you've lost me there. I don't know.
I think this was in the first bases interview that it came up that you said somebody made a joke that you worked with at Peasmore, I guess.
Oh, well, yeah, there was quite a few, leg pulling about certain things there. I mean...
Oh, so that guy might have just been pulling your leg.
Well, it was a case of a lot of people thought it was rather funny when I described what was going on there. And obviously they're curious as to what these beings were like. So I tried to describe them. And I made one comment, which seems to have been totally blown out of all proportion, was, as I think this would occur to anyone with an ounce of curiosity, one day I actually stopped one of them in the corridors, picked it up and put it over my shoulder just to see what would happen. It was totally against regulations, totally against all orders, but I thought, bugger it, I'm going to just see what happens, just my own curiosity. And it just squirmed until I put it down, and then it carried on. It's obviously it's program business. And of course, people have looked at that and said, that's totally stupid. That, who in their right mind would do that? Now that certainly negates any credibility you have. Well, why? If you were there at that time, I'm sure you'd be just as curious. You want to see what would happen if you blocked off, if you stood in the way, because if you stand in front of them when they're coming along, they'll just walk around you. If you place any obstacle in their way, they'll get round it. That's what they're programmed for. So naturally, I thought, yeah, let's give it a go. I'll whack it over the shoulder, and it squirmed. Obviously, it wanted to get on with its business. So yeah, I put it down again. But that's been blown out of proportion. People just think that was ridiculous. I thought it was just a bit of a laugh. We had 4 British in the security team there. Most were Americans. So the 4 of us had a different sense of humour to the Americans. Our humour was, I don't know what to say really. We just had our own ways of getting through the days at that base.
Was there a sense of, when you worked there, was the work environment kind of oppressive, or did you feel more like you had camaraderie between your employers?
It's a very strict, very secret, very sterile place, and after your 3-week, let me see, how can I put this? You go through a process over those initial 3 weeks where you are so desensitized. You're just getting on with your job after that, and you're given an order and you will immediately carry it out. But yes, there was, between myself and the other 3 Brits, we did form a friendship in a way where we could communicate with each other outside of the area, even though that was really against all regulations, which was fraternised whatsoever. But yeah, I got to know the other 3 pretty well, because the American guards, they were more like robots themselves. Wouldn't even grin, wouldn't even laugh, even tell them a joke. But then again, as I say, the whole place is sterile, it's so secure, oppressive in a way, but because you're so desensitized, you don't really feel that oppressiveness. It's just a job.
Would it be fair to say that the atmosphere there was kind of, you might say, highly medicated? Would that, I mean, in terms of what you call desensitization, or you were desensitized, but you talk about too that they gave you drugs sometimes and you wouldn't know it. Like I think in one case they gave you a cigarette. I guess this was maybe when was that? When you stopped?
They're testing out various military grade drugs there too, because again that's all part and parcel of their remit, is to test out new drugs away from the civilian side of things. So if anyone went wrong, it's too bad, no one would ever know. Military grade So yeah, they'll try various things at various times. But again, you're called to the office, and you're told, you're ordered to go and get a certain thing done. Then you're just immediately obeying. Off you go, and perhaps you get an injection. Perhaps you'll be given a tablet. Told to rest in a room for 3 or 4 hours or whatever, and to actually let them know how you're feeling during that time. Yeah, it all depends. A lot was going on all the time. There was no let up.
So while you're in the course of your work, they actually ask you questions like, how are you feeling? Like they're checking you out psychologically while you're working?
Well, you're chipped, so you're monitored all the time anyway. And any change in your bio, then you're called to security to get checked out.
Do you think they could sense it even to the level of who are having thoughts of sabotage? Could they detect something like that?
To be honest, I don't think that would even enter your mind. No, as best as I can say, nothing like that would have actually entered your mind to cause any damage or to. You obviously, if you think you're going against an order, then yeah, you get a bit panicky, but that suddenly goes and you're back doing the job you were told to do.
Do you think that's something they've programmed into their employees, or is that just the fear of the consequences?
I think it's the fear of the consequences, because yeah, more than once someone's got marched into a side office and they've gone through the process, and they've been good little chaps after that.
Dreamtimer on the forum, she said that she's heard that chips are kind of obsolete at this point because they can pick up on people's unique electromagnetic signatures just from their body.
They can, but the trouble is, because we're so saturated with frequencies, Wi-Fi and everything else under the sun, that can sometimes get shrouded, that can get cloudy. So yeah, chips are still the fashion, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that's been asked on the forum, and that's all of what I had wrote down. So I asked you this before at the beginning of the interview, but is there anywhere in particular that's new that you thought or were thinking about talking about before?
I've been quietly working on, to a lesser degree, to a colleague who was in the very first bases interview. I think I can get away with her pen name, Lisa Williams. She's a heck of a great researcher. She's been doing a heck of a lot of research into the Nazi side of things. Now, I've just delved a little bit into that because I've got to be very, very careful. But so far, I believe she's done a great amount of work on that. And we're going to have conversations between the two of us, compare notes, before we would even consider doing a Bases 1 update with Miles Johnston, simply because I think we've both been treated rather unfairly from that very first interview. It was only meant to be a very informal, very casual chat in the park for 3 or 4 hours. Neither of us, that's me and Lisa, we didn't know where it would lead from there. And obviously we're both quite pissed off, sorry for the French, how things have actually progressed over the years. And the type of people that are coming out now, we're both wary, because we started it all 22 years ago, you might as well say. And people have our legacies come on the scene now. People are coming out with all manner of things, and it's so different to what we really intended at that time. So that the Nazi side is one thing that perhaps can be gone into. I can only go into it very, very briefly, because I want to give Lisa a chance to get her research out publicly, and I'm sure it's going to be really great. My only concerns are, of course, as I said, getting it associated with certain types that are out now, and we want to keep arm's length from those individuals. I mean, trouble is, I started quietly. It wasn't meant to be public at all. When I first mentioned that my dad, at the end of the Second World War, because he was in the Royal Engineers, his unit and an American unit were both tasked to seek and, what's the word? They had to go and locate a sensitive base in Germany that the Nazis had. They had to go and locate the base, secure it, and what wasn't known at the time, obviously, to the units, was what sort of facility it actually was. And they were very surprised at what they found there. And as I said, I started giving this information out, not knowing it was going to really go public. And then the next thing I know, a colleague of mine said it on one of their interviews, and then Miles picks it up and goes along with it. And I thought, oh God, this really weren't meant to be out there, not just yet. But it's out there, and there's very little I can do about it, other than the basics. Yes, my dad was involved in a certain project at the end of the war. They located a certain German facility, and what they found there was very, very strange.
Did you ever get any details on what it was that they found?
I was only allowed to see certain details. This is what I tried to keep secret for now.
Right.
I was asked to keep it just to myself, because I knew something was wrong. I mean, my dad, whatever it was that they came across, made him very, very ill. And they couldn't get him home straight away, so he had to remain in Germany for a while. Then they brought him home because of the secrecy involved in the mission. So I'd already known all my life that, yeah, my dad was in the Royal Engineers, that something happened at the end of the war that he could not speak about, and this went right until the day he passed away in 1999. He could not tell me exactly what that was, but he did leave a heck of a load of photographs. I mean, as a child, I constantly was fascinated by this box of small black and white photographs that my dad had, plus some medals, and there was a cigarette case with an insignia on, which I didn't know what the insignia was until I was much older, and then I found out it was an SS officer's cigarette case. So all that bits and pieces, I thought, that's okay. When I get older, I'm going to ask my dad if I can have all this lot, just out of curiosity, historical curiosity. But unfortunately, family things didn't go too well, and the whole lot was beyond my reach. So I never actually got that box of bits and pieces. But it was people who secured War Office records and let me see certain things. There's still a number of things I'm not allowed to see just yet, but at least I know the gist of what actually happened to my dad. So that sort of like finished it for me. So the story was completed for me. I actually knew something was going on with him.
Right. From the details that you were able to see, would it be fair to say that mannequin-like projects have been going on longer than just what?
I'm not sure about mannequin, because there was a previous program to that, Puppet Master, and I think that was pretty widespread. I don't know too many details about the previous program, but obviously what they found in Germany has been spoken about by others, that Germans were actually in touch possibly with an ET race of some sort, right. And whether there was a help with technology or not, I can't say. All I know is what my dad, his unit, and the Americans found that day. They had to seek and secure.
Did you look at the photograph? Look beyond postage. She wanted to know if this photograph was of a PLF or a picture of. I can send.
Yeah, I know that picture.
It's the Ilkley Moore. Ilkley Moor?
Yeah, it's up in Yorkshire. Yeah, I know the case. I wouldn't have thought. I really don't have an explanation, to be honest, for that picture. It's a pity it's not clear and it's not close. But no, I couldn't actually say with any certainty at all what that represents. I've no idea.
All right. So conceivably, it doesn't look too radically different from the PGLFs you were used to seeing?
It was, yeah. Because that photograph isn't overly clear, when you put it up, it's not fantastic.
Really
I wouldn't have said it was anything like what I've seen, no.
Okay. I'm not sure where else we can cover, really. What is, because, like we said before, Carrie and Miles, a lot of that's already been covered, and then you said...
This is it. There's a lot of stuff out there that's covered in detail, and Kerry, yeah. That was a pity that the audio went kaput that day.
Oh, yeah, you can't hardly... I couldn't hear too much.
Can't. No matter what, they tried to clean up the audio, but it was still pretty dodgy. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the people trying to do the transcripts, they were trying to work a miracle in trying to hear what actually was being said. Mm-hmm. So there's a few mistakes within that transcript. I've only read part of it, and to be honest, I couldn't be bothered reading anymore. I don't watch myself. I don't listen to myself, so I'm certainly not going to read about myself.
I noticed towards the end of the interview, you suggested that there's still some details that nobody's really picked up on or talked about in your newsletters that you put out.
Yep.
And that's why...
Yeah, well, the thing is, as I said, over time, various people have come forward and said they either know the project, or they know the base, or they've worked there, or they've done this. They're associated in one way or another. Now, what I've done, deliberately, omitted certain details from those original files.
Right.
So if anyone did come forward in the future, I could ask them specific questions, and if they answered correctly, then I knew they would possibly have been associated with either the program or the base or whatever. They've got to answer these specific questions, and if they answer them correctly, then okay, I'll talk to these people. I mean, Stephen Greer himself came out with, I think it was either 2002 or 2003, that he had a witness from Kent here in England who was working on exactly the same sort of program at a similar base, but he wouldn't give me any details until he had interviewed this guy. And then he said he would contact me, compare notes, blah, 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 blah. That never came about. Someone else came forward, let me see, when was it? 2006. Now, this guy came forward with, yeah, I know you probably don't know me, but I remember you from the base. And we had little conversations over a 2 or 3 week period. Now, this guy was supposedly working at Mildenhall. That's an American base here. And with backwards and forwards information, which all seemed to gel up until a certain point when he said, well, I'm going to be off base for a couple of weeks. Then when I come back, I want to invite you up here so we can have a face-to-face conversation and go through our files. So, yeah, great stuff. Okay, a couple of weeks goes by. Then another couple of weeks goes by, nothing. And then I get an email out of the blue. He's not going to speak to me anymore. It's got too dangerous, got too hot. And I never heard him ever again. So when I start to get somewhere, and then suddenly it's ended. So that's why, as I say, I'm very dubious these days of speaking to anyone, really. They've really got to make sure that, I'm not going to be ridiculed. I've had that for 22 years. You'd be surprised at the abuse, the attacks and threats and God knows what else I've had to endure over 22 years. And, at this stage in time, I think I've said all I need to say. I'm letting other people come forward and add their information, and we'll just see where we go. But one thing It's going to be very disappointing to everyone, but don't hold any hopes for disclosure. It's just never going to happen.
Not from the official government, anyway.
No, not at all. No. I mean, even people like, Stephen Bassett, he's done a fantastic job with his Sits and Hearing, but the trouble is, what happened afterwards? Nothing. No one cares.
Right. Well, it's a good start. I mean, if we were able to get somewhere, people might look back on it in the future and say, well, this was maybe some kind of turning point. I mean, it's progress in some way, you know.
Well, it is. It's like Stephen Greer with his Disclosure Project, 2001. Yeah. I mean, that was momentum in its time, and of course it got overshadowed by the events of 9/11, which was very fortuitous. So that sort of like went by the wayside. Interest was there for a few weeks or a few months, and then it all dried up. And it's the same with Stephen Bassett and the Sits and Hearing. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it's out of the media now. No one cares. It's only the alternative media that's keeping all this stuff alive. Mainstream doesn't care.
Well, what about this? Like Joseph Farrell and these other guys at the Secret Space Program conference. Have you watched their stuff?
I've watched bits and pieces. As I said, to be quite honest, yes, there is a secret space program.
All right, but you don't want to be associated with the people.
Don't know, because it's getting to fairy tale land with some of the things they've come out with.
Right, probably just to discredit the whole idea is what it seems like to me. You know, like you said, it sounds ridiculous. So.
Well, it is. This is it. And people are going to look at it, oh, for God's sake, those people within the alternative community, they're all a bunch of idiots. That's what it's making us all look like.
Well, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name any names, but everybody probably knows what I'm talking about. This one person that said one thing that made me laugh. Really, I had to laugh out loud. He said that when these ETs would communicate with him, they would do it telepathically, but then they would also move their hands around doing sign language that he didn't understand, and then they would also move their mouths. I mean, what the hell? I mean,
exactly. I mean, oh dear. I mean, the more fantastic the tale, the more it gets eaten up by the more gullible members of the alternative community, and there are quite a few gullible people out there. They just lap up. The more outlandish the story, the more it will get picked up on and followed. I can't understand it. It's illogical.
I can't either. Aside from maybe just people, they expect these kind of programs to be exotic and crazy, so when they hear something like that, they just latch onto it, maybe.
Exactly. So when they hear something as very boring as my disclosures, oh, God, really? It's not fantastic enough. We don't want to know. Which is fine. Fair enough. As I say, I've done my job. My information's out there. I can't obviously compete with these fantastic space towns. But then again, I don't want to. I mean, that secret space program, that really consists of certain satellites being put into space that you're not to know about, and certain weapons programs. But it's got nothing to do with ETs. It's for in and out control.
But I noticed reading your newsletters that your way of approaching it, even though you were involved with it as an insider, it matches in a lot of ways what people like Joseph Farrell are doing, because he doesn't claim to be an insider. He's more of a historian, and he takes actual documentation. And in your newsletters, there's a lot of documentation, because you list bases and dates. You list all kind of very specific information.
Individuals were named, which people keep saying to me, well, what about names? And, well, you look in those documents, you'll find a few names.
Right.
And also I gave people the opportunity of taking their attention away from Area 51 and looking over at Dugway over in Utah. Now, that is where a lot of the interesting things are happening.
Well, you've got whole lists of bases all over the world where interesting things have been associated with them. I mean,
you've got let me see, an area I don't really want to get into, but I'll basically just touch the surface. AI. Visual intelligence. Now, there is an AI hub, and I think I've listed in those documents exactly where that is. In November, Mike. Manzano.
All right. I can.
It's all there.
I'll
If
get
it's
it.
not in the files, it'll be on interviews or some other forum or other. I mean, a lot of stuff I think still up and available on the old Project Avalon, and I think that's there just for archives. But I think I mentioned a lot of stuff back there. If people want to bother to go and look, don't worry if you don't want to, because I really can't be bothered anymore. But there is a lot of old stuff there.
Well, we should be able to get some of this up on the One Truth server, so we can host it locally. I mean, at least these the newsletters and stuff.
Well, that's entirely up to you. But as I said, I personally have no real interest anymore. I'm just trying to continually help people. I like to point the way, assist where I can, and also advise if I think they're definitely being led down the garden path.
Right.
Although it's unethical of me to name names, but I'm pretty sure people know roughly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think people are getting a little bit... I mean, after it happens so many times over and over with these different characters, you start recognizing the patterns, hopefully, quicker.
And most people on the forum are pretty bright sparks, so they should be able to work it out.
Right. Well, I think most of us probably been through the sideshow enough times. Hopefully, we're starting to get the idea.
Yeah.
Well, that knocks out an hour. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or you want to cut it off?
Well, would it be okay to have a bathroom and a ciggy break?
Hey, we could do that. You want to do that and then come back and we talk about something else?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Well, yeah, it'll maybe give me an opportunity to get some more thoughts together.
Yeah, great. Should we give it 15 minutes?
All right, that's fine.
That's right, okay. What do I do, close this down or let it just run?
I'll just close it off so I'll have two files. So
Okay.
that'll be fine. I'll call you back in a few.
Okay, that's great. I'll back in about 15.
All right, bye.
Cheers.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we're back.
Righty-ho.
Sandy from the forum, I overlooked her question earlier. She wants to know what kind of strength you lean on to keep going. Well, but you said, you've said about all you feel like you need to say.
Yeah. Well, I've only managed to get through all of this after all these years is family support. I mean, we're a close-knit family. We've had a heck of a lot to deal with. Some we've mentioned publicly, some we have not. And it's been, very traumatic over the years, but as I say, we've survived as a family unit, but we do have the backup of certain colleagues, certain associates who have looked out for us, helped us along the way. So we've had help. We've got, let me see, let's just say I've got a lot of friends. I think that should cover it.
Right. I guess just because of all the stuff you've been through, a lot of your close family have seen a lot of odd things as well.
Well, it's a case of they've experienced what's happened to me in the course of my disclosures, so they've seen firsthand, what we've been through. So they're veterans as well, if you like, of what happens when you try and open up the secrecy and tell people what's happening, what's really happening. So they've seen firsthand, So I'm very grateful for such a close-knit family.
And the people who are kind of overseeing you putting this information out, they must be keeping a pretty good eye on things too to keep things from happening.
You see, what people get the wrong idea. I think people have either read too many books or they've seen too many films that immediately someone comes forward with anything that's shouldn't be spoken about, gets bumped off, gets killed. It doesn't work that way. It would depend on the level of threat you pose. What they try and do is destroy your credibility, destroy you from within by putting you under various very, very awkward situations. They'll try all that, the soft stuff first, before they even think of causing any harm. But I've been there. We've done that road. We've been from one end right to the other where they literally had tried to silence me. But that was at one time. It's not going to be done again because, to be totally honest, and without any bullshit, because I have a particular skill set, I'm an asset to both sides. So they're not in any hurry to really lose a possible asset that either side could actually use. So I'm okay at the moment.
This kind of way of protecting yourself, then, just to put you in a situation where your existence is beneficial to both sides in some way.
Well, it's been, as I say, of use to both sides. So neither side really wants to lose out on an opportunity.
Could you go into, well, I mean, obviously for the gray or white hats, the opportunity is to sort of release this information they want public. Could you give any kind of indication as what the use would be for the other side?
Yeah, well, it's always the on the black side of things. It's always weaponization. They would use you as a weapon of some sort. They would. Again, I've got to be very, very careful of wording.
Right.
My time at the facility was also used in remote viewing. Certain Cold War targets, and it also meant, I'm going to be very, very careful. Yeah, it's going to be a bit tricky.
So you don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Yeah, well, all the targets they gave us were legitimate Cold War targets, so there's no risk of anything criminal or by the by. It was all legitimate Cold War targets. So these would be soft and hard targets which we were told to view and, if necessary, manipulate. So that's a part of the skill set that would be useful to, as I say, either side. If they wanted someone taken out on the other side of the planet, well then that wouldn't be too much of a problem.
So I mean, it sounds like they're really divided between one side and another. I mean, there has to be some kind of balance. I mean, it's not like they're all just, literal descendants of the Nazis that'll just take anybody out.
No, you've got levels on both sides. I mean, you've got the real diehards who, for whatever reason, in their tiny little minds, want total control of the planet. They want everything and everyone under their control. They want everything done their way. But that filters down even within the black hats. You've got certain black hats who, okay, we've done this and we've done that, but perhaps we shouldn't go any further. And that's where they filter then into the grey hats, who then filter back to the white hats.
Right. So it's a spectrum. Yeah, it's a spectrum.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Well, that's good, though. I mean, because we tend to almost dehumanize people, like you say, from movies or whatever the case is, that these people in the Black Hat projects or, what's evolved from the Nazi programs are just all ruthless type people. But
that was the idea then. I mean, the Germans, they were well in advance of the Allies during the war with so many things, including mind control, technology, and obviously that filtered through into the States under Project Paperclip. And it's really carried on since then, MK Ultra and all the other umbrella programs. But what you mentioned just now was, in films and TV and what have you, that the public are being dumbed down anyway by the actual rot that is dished out on TV, and they're being desensitized with so much being put into films and TV programs. I mean, these days, you just go to YouTube and you'll find so many graphic little movie clips, and people just watch it and they take no blind bit of notice because they've been so desensitized. Watching people crash, watching people being killed, it's disgraceful. But because society is so desensitized, you don't give it a second thought. It's arm's length. It doesn't worry you.
Mm-hmm.
See all these things on TV. They're fascinated by car chases. They're fascinated by all these events where lone shooters and all the rest of it. I'm really amazed. I'm appalled at the way people do actually react to what they see on TV.
Right.
Because it's they don't really care.
No, and I can see it's not just the people who would be in these programs who, of course they're doing evil things, the experimenting on people or whatever, but you see the same type of attitudes in society when people used to say things like after 9/11, people would say, turn the whole Middle East into a parking lot.
Exactly.
And then this is a part of the country or the world with over 1 billion people in it.
Well, it's saddening, really, to see what we are doing to not only ourselves, but what we're doing to the planet. I mean, it's disgraceful. It's disgusting. And we've got no sense of responsibility. We've got no shame. And we are just too desensitized. The killing just goes on and on and on.
When you were in these programs, did you have any sense that anybody working in them on an administrative kind of high level has a vision that they're actually doing good for the world, or they're actually aiming towards some kind of advancement of society, or is it mostly just all about control?
To be honest, I don't think anyone would have. They're just doing their job, and I don't think anyone would have had those kinds of feelings or thoughts. So they're just doing a job.
All right. So they just look at it as purely this. I'm in the military. This is what I do. They don't have any kind of broad vision for what they're doing.
Well, maybe the top brass obviously did, but for the minions underneath, no. You just carry out orders.
Mm-hmm. So I could see there'd be a lot of room in there for such a large organization where there would be a lot of different agendas and spectrums of opinions and this type of thing.
Well, as I said, you go through an initial indoctrination period of 3 weeks, intense. Now that training is equal to the American Air Force security training, but at the same time, you are so mind controlled, so desensitized, you will carry out an order. I mean, they say, well, right, grab that sidearm. The first person you see in corridor, whatever it is, take them down. And you'll just immediately go out and do it without hesitation or without a thought. Now, you wouldn't do that in normal life.
Right.
But some of us did eventually get some sort of a conscience and so, no, that's it, no more.
So I guess it's after that level, after you have some kind of awakening of the conscience, that's when people within these programs start thinking, well, what am I doing? And like in your case, I'm not doing this anymore. That thing.
Yeah. And that's when they've either got to get rid of you one way or another, and they'll try and wipe you, or various ways they can get rid of you. If you're going to be a real pain, then and there's no way of re-indoctrination, they'll just get rid of you one way or another. Yeah.
Do you see? Have you seen any technology that you've seen in these programs come out to the public? Like, are you seeing any kind of leak from classified stuff coming out public and being used by companies, energy systems or computer technology or anything like that?
Not as such. The closest I've ever seen would have been one of Lockheed's aircraft, which I would have thought would have been unveiled to the public at a certain stage, but it hasn't happened yet. But I'm hoping it will at one stage, and that's their special weapons platform Firefly. And that's a delta-shaped aircraft, which I'm pretty sure would have been released to the public, 10 years after it was test flown 88. So that would have been, late 90s. I would have thought that would have been in the public domain, but sadly it hasn't.
Was it using like gasoline, conventional fuels, or was it using an alternative system?
And not been an engineer, but psychotronics, the thing was kitted out with. I don't know its power system. That's totally beyond me. Those types of things.
That'd probably be a big determinant factor, because if it's using, what people call free energy, whether it's really free or not, I mean, that would upset a lot of things in the world with the oil market the way it is.
Well, yeah, but then again, this idea, and Greer pushes it a lot, doesn't he? This free energy,
right?
So many things out there. Actually, how could anything be free? Because eventually someone is going to have to organise this so-called free energy to distribute around the world. So you're going to end up paying for free energy anyway.
Yeah. Even if it's just a generator that powers your house and you don't have to pay a monthly bill, I mean, you still got to pay something for it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not going to be totally free after all, but maybe we'll get there one day.
And with the remote viewing stuff you did, have you ever checked out Courtney Brown's organization or any stuff they're doing?
What I try to do is avoid any of the others. Because I've had people approach me over the years who have asked me to A, teach them how to remote view, and B, give them insights as to what professionals or semi-professionals can actually do. So I've been very wary in saying very much to people, because when we were doing that, if you've got a natural ability to remote view, they will enhance that. They will either with chemicals, drugs, or wire you up to the computer system, where you will literally be so much stronger, and that will be recorded. Again, that was very useful for the Cold War targets.
Do you have any idea what kind of drugs they were using to enhance remote viewing capability?
I don't know whether it's just for remote viewing, but I detailed a couple of the drugs in the documents.
Oh, okay.
Military grade drugs.
So you wouldn't...
At the time, they'd probably come out with a heck of a lot more.
Right, but you wouldn't have any, technical knowledge.
No, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a technician, so, no.
Well, Courtney Brown's organization, what he's doing, they get some really amazing results. I mean, unless somebody says these people aren't really doing it in the blind, that they're somehow, they're collaborating to fake it. I mean, if that's not the case, and it's pretty convincing stuff what they're doing.
Well, this is it. A real good viewer, they've got to be praised for what they do. It really is extremely accurate and very, very interesting what they can do. I mean, this is 30 years on from when we were involved with it. I can imagine, it'd be pretty good. And there'd be no reason to lie anyway. What they've uncovered.
Yeah. I don't know what you think about 9/11, but I know what they did with 9/11. They said that they actually had, when they first tried to remote view certain things about it, there was some kind of block that somebody had put to prevent remote viewing from happening, and they had to go around it. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was standard practice many years ago, so again, that's been perfected now. I mean, what they did at the time I was doing remote viewing and remote influencing was they have each and every facility that's secure, they do have both a human and also they do have electronic means to detect anyone who tries to remote view the area. They can be detected and followed back. So we had to be very, very careful. The Russians were very hot on that.
Oh.
So, 9/11, my views were, if it wasn't an inside job, as everyone keeps parading, it certainly was government complicit. So there's so many aspects that just do not ring true.
Right.
Not try to remote view that. I'll leave that up to the experts these days. But something doesn't sit right with so many aspects of that day. Will we ever find out the whole truth? Probably not.
Do you know the actual mechanism behind how they would block somebody from remote viewing or try to block it?
Well, you've got these, what are they called? The weapons systems Judy Wood mentions.
Oh, the directed energy things that Judy Wood talks
Yes,
about?
directed energy. Now, that could work in many ways as to giving a shielding to an area, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, that would stop people getting through.
Like, is this an electromagnetic type of energy?
It's an EM shield, yeah.
And that'll prevent remote viewing?
That would definitely, yeah, you just bounce off it. You couldn't get through that. It'd be like a Faraday cage. You just couldn't do it.
Now, is this connected to, you said some remote viewers, some humans were plugged into this system in some way?
Well, because some humans have a very high ability at sensing, so they can immediately sense when someone is trying to remote view their location. And the very clever ones can actually not only detect you, they will follow you back to source. And so you're going to be in trouble when you get back.
Especially, I guess, since you said, you could remotely take somebody out.
That would be under the influence in part, yeah. We were trained to actually, either knock out a computer system or a vehicle, any hard target, or if it came to it, if they had a target that they specifically wanted brought down, we'd use it on a soft target too.
So if somebody in Russia was remote viewing a target in the UK, or they had teams that were continually, looking in on things, you could potentially trace them back and then take them out, right?
That's how it works, yeah. If that was how it was meant to be. I mean, you do get certain parameters you have to work under. So if you're detected and you're being brought back to source, well then I think they put some measure in place. But a lot of the times, the Russians did get through, and it was crazy times sometimes in that room. Panic, the panic button goes, the red lights come on, we've been infiltrated, shut down all the systems, and they go through this, they go through that, it's pandemonium. And you think to yourself, is it all worth it really?
No, especially if they can remote view at different points in time. I mean, if you're remote viewing 9/11, that's obviously not something that's ongoing, so they can...
But that's the weirdest thing about it, is, they say, remote view a point in time. Now, obviously, you're going to be limited in certain aspects of a past. But then it's even weirder when you allegedly remote view the future.
Right.
That really is wacky.
Well, what do you think of these theories that there's there's different timelines, and maybe you remote view something in the future, but it doesn't happen? Maybe that's a different future. How do you reconcile those kind of ideas?
Yeah, they get so complicated. Timelines, I dare say there are timelines, but it's just not an area I'm familiar with personally. Right. And I find it too complicated, so I just read it with interest, but that's about as far as it goes. There's too many people out there that know a heck of a lot more than I do, so maybe there are timelines. And yes, as you say, you've got to be very careful when you think you're on a certain timeline and it turns out to be incorrect, and you don't know whether another timeline actually exists, so it will come back as a negative.
You never had any exposure to any kind of programs where the government was, or they were even talking about that type of thing, as far as you know, like between traveling either, or some people talk about portals or this type of thing, like they had at Montauk, these types of things.
Well again, we like labelling everything. Montauk, strangely enough, had a connection to Peasmore, in as much as they both had the special computer enhanced chairs. What they call the Montauk seat or chair or something.
Yeah, Montauk seat or something.
Yeah. Well, that was very similar to the trip seat at Peasmore. They both did very much the same thing. But what I found surprising was I found out that Preston Nichols over at Montauk actually knew the guy who oversaw the British side of things, and he actually travelled from the UK over to Montauk to oversee certain things over there, and then come back to the UK. I thought that was pretty weird.
So you call it a TRIPSY. What did it do in your experience?
Well, it has various purposes. It's used for various things. For giving a MILAB, an abduction experience to a target. You can also use it too, as I said, to enhance viewing or influencing a target. So when you're powered up to that computer, you're much more powerful. And also they can record everything you do, so there's no problems in the debrief.
Did you ever have any exposure to, I don't know, anything like teleportation or just super fast, almost instantaneous travel, any type of things like that?
No, I guess that would all come under the viewing side of things, because when you're enhanced, even with just the chemicals, just the drugs, everything happens so much quicker and it's so much clearer. So I guess you could call that. Yeah.
Now, the reason I ask is just because I know people like Andrew Basiago say things like that they have jump rooms at places like Montauk, things like that.
Well, I can't say I've never had any experience directly with any of those bracket jump rooms or these alleged what's the other one they call them? Not Stargates, they call them something else as well, but no, I've no direct experience with that, so I couldn't actually say, you know, I've never known anyone to go into a room and they're suddenly transported to another planet or something. No, I can't say that.
Right. Well, were you exposed to the actual craft that they have? Have they back-engineered alien craft that you were able to see?
The closest I've come to that would have been being shown and being part of an experiment at Salisbury Plain over in Wiltshire, when they brought in an object which I now know was based on non-Earth technology, and I was just the guinea pig to stand underneath the thing as it came over.
So that was, I guess, kind of segmented off from what you were involved in.
Yeah, that was entirely different. Yeah, it was just because I had a good guinea pig at hand, so I got called out to be said guinea pig in experiment and just to see what would happen. See, again, all these things are filmed and photographed by the authorities, but they're never going to be blooming released to the public. What they should be, we should say, look, we do have craft that are capable of doing this and doing that, and maybe even commercial flights from one country to another will take much less time, it'd be much cheaper, but they didn't.
Right.
It's all kept under wraps.
Now, I'm thinking a lot of the reason for that is if they replace the oil industry, there'd be political turmoil just because of the role that oil plays in geopolitics.
Yeah, this is it. Politics. I mean, there's two main areas I try to avoid at all costs: is politics and religion. But everything actually comes under politics. It's all political. Mm-hmm. Everything's political.
That might be the reason why, because even though I can see where Greer's been compromised just by certain things he says, and him saying that all extraterrestrials are, good, or they're not going to harm you or whatever. I mean, I have problems just trying to imagine that, but at the same time, I can also see where it comes from with if this energy technology was released, this must be a big block. I mean, aside from the fact that now, say we know that extraterrestrials exist, the implications that would have on religion or even people's sociology is thinking, our government's not really our mommies and daddies anymore. Now we've got this other mommy and daddy we can look to, because people would probably latch onto extraterrestrials in that way. But even aside from that, just the energy shakeup would be a reason in itself for them not to disclose things.
Well, as I said on the forum, I don't do doom and gloom.
Right.
present any bad news for the future, like a lot of them out there are doing, which never seems to come true anyway. But yeah, certainly there would be an impact on society. There's got to be, if suddenly there was this disclosure that, yeah, there are strange things in our atmosphere and strange beings who are in these strange things, it would have an impact. I don't think it would be quite so bad on religion as a lot of people think. I think even the Pope has stated they're all God's creatures in one way or another. So I don't really think there'll be so much of an upheaval, but the economy side of things will definitely take a turn for the worse.
Right.
And that's what we've got to work on. It needn't, but knowing what humans are like, yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to have another structure ready to take that shock.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the Vatican's already covering its bases with that stuff, like you're saying.
Yeah, very clever.
Well, that makes you think, too, that maybe the Vatican has an inclination to believe that this stuff is going to come out sooner or later. That if they're covering their bases, they must take it seriously.
Well, I think, yeah, that their own insiders obviously know what the situation is because they're in touch with other people, top brass around the world. So they all know, the top brass, they all know what's going on, what state of play there is, when we can do this and when we may be able to do that. So yeah, the bases are covered by the Vatican, so the religion side of things is okay, except for one or two trouble spots around the planet, which could cause a bit of a problem.
In terms of religion?
Yeah.
You're talking about the Middle East, maybe?
The Middle East, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would be a little bit of a problem for them.
It would be a little bit of a problem, yeah.
Or maybe that's another reason why there's so much focus on the Middle East today. Maybe all these regime changes are trying to institute a cultural change where they'd be more able to adapt to this type of revelation.
Yeah, but is that working?
Doesn't look like it. Well, it could go either way, I guess. It depends on who comes out on top.
Yeah. But as I say, it's all political in the long run. That controls literally everything. And you've seen the way recently that the stock markets have sort of like wobbled here and there.
Right.
It's all manipulated.
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, at the same time, if somebody decides we're going to throw the switch, I mean, what are we going to do, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's happened before.
Yeah, it has, yes. The trouble is, as I say, there's so many everyday things that people have to worry about. They have to worry about their job. They have to worry about providing for the family, paying the bills, doing this. So they really have no time to worry about subjects which to them are so far-fetched, such as disclosure on UFOs and aliens and stuff. It's not going to get a thought by the average Joe public. They haven't got the time. They're so pressurised in their normal life by everything that's happening around them. It's just not going to happen.
I guess kind of tying them down, if something disastrous did happen, like to say the stock market collapsed and people had to be focused now on food and heat, you know, through the winter and these types of things, then maybe that would be a good time to start introducing more things to the public, because of the stress of just immediately finding food and shelter would kind of mitigate what would happen socially just from the shock of knowing now there's extraterrestrials. But that it might be a point where you can suddenly inject that. Now the chaos is already kind of strained by people just trying to make it through an economic situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's possible. But then again, would it make it even worse?
I've
seen various scenarios of disclosure. The UK were very close to disclosure of sorts back in 1977-78 because they thought the public in the UK were ready for a special announcement, but it never came. It was very close. The government were very close to releasing, but at the last minute the MOD pulled it back, which is a bit of a shame because the UK in 77 and 78 was so hyped up, the whole subject. It would have been a perfect time.
Was there any reason in particular for that?
Well, the UK in 77 was going through a massive wave of sightings up and down the whole country. Myself and Andrew Collins were involved in covering some of those cases, but it was so high profile. It was on the news, in the papers, magazines, everywhere, and it continued for most of the year. So the MOD thought, well, this could be a prime time to actually inject a little bit of official information. And that sort of like carried on to about March, April of 78, when they released Close Encounters of the Third Kind over here. And so they thought, definitely this is the time. So by the time the summer came, June, July, they were just inches away from releasing that information. But again, last minute, it was pulled back. And it was a great shame.
I think there's some kind of intervention from even higher above came in and pulled that back.
Just someone obviously got a bit skittish somewhere and thought, no, we can't do this because it will then open up another can of worms, and it really would not be appropriate.
So almost it's a kind of situation where the longer they go on withholding this information,
worse it's going to get, obviously, yeah. Which they've been told time and time again. But that's unfortunately how it's going to be. The longer we all wait, the worse it's going to be. But they'd rather, stick head in the sand, hope it will go away one day.
Maybe let the next generation worry about it.
Yeah.
I've heard, too, that in the 1950s, the U.S. government was really close to releasing information. I think it was before Blue Book and all these type things came out. Because then they went back and tried to cover it up, and I think that's, Have you heard anything about that?
Well, let's see. They started off with Project Sign, didn't they? Which seemed to be a case of, yes, there's something up there, we're looking into it. Then it suddenly turned into Project Grudge.
Right.
Which immediately gave the idea of, oh dear, no, there really isn't anything here. And they were forced to open the Blue Book and sort of give a public relations look on things, that the Air Force was actually, physically doing something about all these intrusions in the sky. But once the Washington DC incident in, was it July 52, took place, I think they were pretty close then to, we've got to issue some sort of statement. But again, it never comes. It's so infuriating, because they can help themselves by saying, look, there are things in our skies, they're probably intelligently controlled, we don't know what they are, where they come from. At least you're halfway there. You're admitting that, yes, there's something strange out there. But then again, the other side are going to say, well, if there's something strange up there that you don't know about, how safe are our spies? You're not really doing your job. So they can't win, really. They really can't win.
I guess it really is a kind of situation where they have to build a secondary structure behind the way society runs now, just so when certain...
being introduced in a covert, stealthy way towards that new type of society. I don't know. I'm only guessing. Because I'm seeing things through very old eyes, and I've got very old ideas, and I'm just trying to keep up with the pace of things today, and it's just getting so mad so fast. I can't keep up with technology at all. It's just overtaken me. Everything's happening too quick.
Right. It really is a massive change since the 40s and 50s, especially. My grandparents, they didn't even have an indoor toilet.
Well, this is the same over here. Many of the older housing, it was all outside. But we've advanced to a degree in one way, but now we're being totally blinded. It's all up to the younger generation. They can cope with all this very fast-paced technology. Mm. I mean, today, babies are born with a phone in one hand and a tablet in the other. They actually know what to do straight away. Yeah. We weren't. We, very old-fashioned. All this is beyond me.
But there's a certain responsibility that comes with that technology that the older generations, I think, would understand better. That the amount of privacy invasion and all these type things, the amount of civil liberties were just given away. Mm-hmm. For this. That's a dangerous part of it.
That's probably our only compensation us oldies have is, we can see the dangers. I mean, or the younger generation, it's, yeah, wow, let's have the latest iPhone, let's have this, let's have
Right.
that. Yeah, but with that comes, responsibility.
Track their every movement and everything.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. And when you try and warn them, I say, oh, you're just old, you don't know about this, you know nothing.
Right. Well, I don't have an iPhone.
Well,
You know,
yeah, I don't see the point in paying such a massive price for just a name. I mean, there's certainly a lot of other smartphones on the market, much cheaper that do just the job. But today, you must have the label.
yeah. It was on the news not too long ago. They were going around and showing people. They said, "Do you know that, I can see everywhere you've been in the past month just by going in your iPhone and, looking on a certain option. It records all of that stuff. And it sends it off to the government, of course, immediately."
Well, what people, they may be smart enough to realise that they're given clues in a lot of these programs you see on TV, these not necessarily films, but some of these series.
Yeah, like the police series where they're doing investigative work and all these. They showed
also some of these other high-tech sort of stuff. They're fictional, but they're showing you what certain technology can do. And at times they do hint at very, very closely what actually is being done. And I thought, that's clever. There's a big hint people might pick up on, but then again, probably won't.
It's definitely going to be a interesting next couple of decades anyway. See how things.
I can just sit back and just watch the river.
Watch the fireworks.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, my family's awake and aware of what is going on, and I'm sure there are many, many others out there that are just as aware of what's going on. We've just got to keep being aware and don't let anyone try and blindfold us or muddy the waters anymore, or try and lead us down the garden path with some really fantastic claim about the saviours are coming from the skies and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, because they're bloody well not. We've got to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got to mend our ways. We've got to sort out and stop actually physically damaging this planet one way or another. But that's all up to us. We're not going to get any help from above. We've got to do that.
Right. And I think that's one of the key things is taking responsibility. If you got somebody coming out there and he's in any way saying that extraterrestrials are going to take responsibility off of us, I think that should be an immediate red flag.
It should be. People should have learned from the 50s and 60s when we had the contactees like George Adamski and Dan Fry and all the others. And, the Space Brothers, they're going to do this. No, they're not.
Right.
Why would they? Okay, they may not sit around and let us totally destroy ourselves. Well, maybe the planet's more worth to them than us. But no, we can't leave it up to anyone else. We've got into this state and we've got to get ourselves out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no special saviour up there who's literally going to appear at the last second. I can't see it happening.
If it is, it's probably either the CIA or the Vatican, or
Exactly, yeah. Is there any other questions that members might have?
Well, I looked through them, and like I said, I think most of them were answered on the forum itself, and I asked some of them anyway. Let's see. Granny Fanny, she just says she looks forward to the interview. Sandy, I asked you that one. That was about how do you keep going. You said your family. I asked Aragorn's questions.
Well, the thing is, it's also, besides having a very strong family unit and help from certain people, it's been a case of inside a deep sense of wanting revenge on what they did to me personally. That I've actually mentioned all these things.
So that's a big driving factor for you.
It is a driving factor, yes. Because they've done it to me, and they've done it to thousands and thousands of others, and yeah, it's got to stop.
I'd imagine that a lot of people could sympathize with that, even within the programs.
Oh yeah.
Ellen wanted to know if you've heard of the Tavistock Institute.
Yeah, well, everyone's heard of Tavistock and their role in things. That's why I tried to mention about a certain Dr. Jorian West, who had his little fingers in so many different places regarding mind control. It wasn't just in the States, he was over here too. I believe he was working with, what's that guy in Canada? I forget his name at the moment. But yeah, Tavistock is linked to everything else. You've got an umbrella program. I think I answered it on the forum. Yeah, I know all about Tavistock. And you've got various other people who are looking into aspects. I mean, a very good researcher is Cabby Morgan. She's looking into the UK side of mind control. She's a great source of research. So, but sometime you want to contact Kathy, it might be a good idea.
All right. The Tavistock Institute, is that kind of like a think tank that just has a...
Yeah, among other things, yeah.
They have a public, obviously they're publicly known, but then you make it sound like, well, of course, they also must have some kind of involvement in...
Well, as I said, when you do a little bit of deep digging and research, you find out exactly what they have been up to. So it don't take much research. But the person who has really looked into in great detail is Kathy Morgan.
All right, I'll take a note of that. I'll look her up. Just a question off the...
She's a channel, and she's also been interviewed by Miles a few times, but she's a wealth of information. Good researcher.
All right. Just a kind of off-the-wall question, Tavistock Institute made me think of it. What do you think about the Beatles being all that Paul is Dead stuff? You ever look into that any?
No, I find it funny that my daughter, obviously she's been brought up with all this stuff, so it's not amazing to her, but the music industry tied to mind control, manipulation, and the Illuminati and all this sacrifice business. We had long chats about Michael Jackson and various other artists who it's believed within the alternative community that they've been mind controlled, that they're Illuminati, that they're this, that, and that. And so, yes, really interesting conversations. And of course, other people in the music industry have been brought up in our conversations. And recently you had David Bowie. And of course now you'll see all over the internet about his connections with the occult and the rest of it. I mean, you've got to be so careful. I mean, there's so much stuff out there that seems to say, look, everyone in the music industry is involved with mind control, sacrificing, the Illuminati, this, that, and everything else. It becomes ridiculous. You can name any name in the pop world, and oh yeah, they're Illuminati. Oh, and that one.
Well, Michael Jackson in his later years, he was actually speaking out against a lot of stuff, and that might have had to do with why he was killed, or why he died at the time.
That's conversations me and my daughter have been having. We've been having little discussions about because Michael was saying this and saying that, and then maybe he was silenced because he was always saying history is untrue. It's not right. So again, unfortunately, who's going to say whether he was bumped off or not?
Right.
That purpose. But it's just interesting, as I say, my daughter's interested in, she's a Michael Jackson fan, there's Michael Jackson stuff everywhere here. So, and obviously I'm one of these internet people, as she calls us, and she's put two together. What do you think about being mind controlled? Well, it's always a possibility, but we're never going to prove it. And then to other stars and in the movies and in music. Oh, it's mind blowing.
Well, even if somebody's being manipulated or under some kind of influence, do you think there's still a way that they can maybe brute force themselves back into a, position of responsibility? I mean, can you overcome that in some way if you had enough?
I'm pretty sure if you're not too deeply manipulated or programmed, yeah, there's always a way you can cut through that and try and get it out to the world what is happening. And I think that's what Michael's doing in the later times.
Mm. It's not a totally hopeless situation. Even if somebody is mind controlled or believes they are, they can still.
There's still going to be rational thought somewhere, and ways that they can break. It depends how deep the programming is. I mean, I've seen some individuals, they've been driven so hard they've virtually turned into cabbages, and you've got others that's only a light programming, which they can easily move out of if they so wish.
Well, yeah, that's all the questions that were on the thread.
Okay.
We've talked about everything from, I don't know, we covered a good amount of material. And then, like we said at the beginning, you also did the things with Carrie and at least a couple with Miles, right? You did 2 with Miles or just 1?
I think it's, let me see, began in 94, then there was another one in 96 at Mendlesham. After that, 97, again at Mendlesham. And then at 2000, when a lady from Dr. Greer's CSETI team came over, and we did some filming at Bentwaters and at home here. But that didn't come across too well. I hated that actual set of interviews because I was not long... I was still recovering from a mini stroke, so I weren't in great health, and so I really must have come across pretty bad. But he still put it up. Right.
And then we've got all those scans of the newsletters you put out in the 90s too, up to 2000. I mean, it's a lot to read through.
Yeah. Well, as I said, that would have continued past 2000 if it hadn't have been for, let me see, it was again in the summer of 2000 when Dr. Greer's team contacted me and said, well, Dr. Greer's actually going to be at Glastonbury and he would very much like to see you. Could you come up and see him?
All right. I remember reading that in the file there.
Unfortunately, yeah, I was still recovering and travelling all that distance would have been impossible. So we made arrangements for a special courier to pick up all the documentation. We got that across to the States. And the next thing, as I said, was the lady coming across from the States and interviewed me with Miles. Of course, now that I don't need to do the documents anymore. I thought, well, just taking it over, and that's fine. I can relax a bit.
Right. Well, there's a blessing. But the papers you've scanned in the voice newsletters, I mean, one of those I read, it was a letter from, I guess, a career secretary or somebody saying that he wanted to come meet you. But then the next letter they sent was, oh, no, never mind, he's not going to meet you. He's got enough information from so-and-so, and he's just going to take that with him.
Yeah.
And so...
it's strange because also in December of 2000, I got a telephone call, 2 members of Greer's disclosure team were in Scotland, and they wanted to come down and interview me. Well, as I said to them, well, I've done this interview with CSETI, it's going to be the same sort of thing, so, and I'm still in the recovery stages, what's the problem? That's okay, I think we've got enough to go on, and we'll be in touch. So it was left at that. The rest is history, as they say.
Well, if you ever want to come out with anything else or have something, you feel like you left out or you want to add something new, you can always let us know, drop us a line, we can do this again anytime.
As I've said, what I said off camera to Kerry back in 2011 was, under the right conditions, I like it to be casual and informal, just sitting around discussing things, no formal stuff. I could talk about a lot of stuff for 5, 6, 7 hours at a time, but it has to be under very certain situations and conditions. So, sure, if I feel I need to cover anything else, you'll be the first to know.
No, I appreciate it.
As I said, Miles keeps asking about a follow-up, but as I say, I'm really not too keen, and nor is Lisa.
Right.
She's not too keen. So she feels the same as I do, that we was perhaps made to look idiots in that first. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were there really just to have a casual chat about things. We didn't think it was going to go anywhere near where it has gone right up to now. So we're both wary.
But at the same time, though, I think that makes it more credible, because you can tell that this isn't some big staged thing. You're just a couple guys sitting around talking, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the sort of situation. Then, if I'm calm and relaxed, and I don't feel a threat, then I'll casually can talk on and on and on, because the system knows I'm not threatened in any way. I can just carry on. And that's why we chose that park, because it was a public place, and I thought, well, no one's going to try anything here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I watched that one, and like I said, it didn't seem, like too out there or anything like that. Of course, I'm sure it was a little bit different back then, because now, we've got all this other stuff out there, just totally off the wall.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, again, very basic stuff back then. As I said, just the two of us giving our information over to Miles. Nice, warm August afternoon. No problems at all. And, all this formal stuff where they come out with it, you can see it's staged and they're set to say certain things.
Right, exactly.
No, not the same old thing time and time again. That's what bugs me about all these conferences. You get the same faces time and time again with the same information, and to keep on that circuit, even old boys like Bob Dean, bless him, great guy, but he feels the need to actually add all this modern stuff that others are coming out with just to keep on the circuit. And that's such a shame. He doesn't need to. He's got the assessment, all that business to fall back on. That's what he's known for. But he's asked in various interviews and things these days, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And the poor bugger's he's got to answer, hasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the point, though. I mean, to bring out all this crazy stuff and just muddy the water, but it drags all the attention towards the most fantastic stuff.
Yeah. Well, the internet now has a blooming great circus, but we've got to put up with that. It really needs policing, but there's nothing we can do.
Right. It just goes back to personal responsibility.
Yeah. And there's too many that are giving up that responsibility and just letting everyone ride roughshod and doing what they want.
Right. And I guess, if you're the kind of person that would not take responsibility for checking out the facts for yourself, then you'd also be the same type of person that would be okay with the idea of aliens coming down and let them take over and let them, give them the responsibility of fixing everything,
Yeah, that sort of mindset, yeah. Not someone else than I can be bothered, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to work like that. We're going to have to do something ourselves.
Yeah.
But I gotta get off here in a few minutes.
Okay.
I got stuff I got to take care of today, but I mean, I enjoyed the 2 hours here.
Yeah, it's been great. As I said, I don't know how I've come across. There's so many things that run through my mind that I need to say, and maybe it comes out wrong, but.
Right, or you'll think about them later, maybe. Something you missed, or
But hopefully, I've not bored everyone to death. And we'll just see how things go. As I said, I'm always here. Anyone wants to ask questions, they know where to find me.
Right, you're Smokey Joe on the forum, just so everybody knows.
Yeah. Well, it's been great. As I said, I see how things go from now on. We'll see what the members think of it.
All right, well, it should be up within, I'll post the audio up on YouTube, and then I think Malcolm will fix it up, and we'll post it on a thread, and it'll be up probably by this evening. Well, it's already evening where you're at, but you know, better tonight.
Okay, oh, that's fine. Okay. Well, thanks very much again.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, and maybe speak again.
All right, maybe. Bye.
Okay then, bye.